I'm tired.
The Late Morning Program with Nam Ras Podcast.
Hare Krishna, everyone. You're listening to the Nam Ras Podcast, the number one Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm super honored to have Nakula Das on today. Nakula Das, Haribo.
Haribo.
So Nakula Das is I'll let him say what he does, but people already know him because you already came on the podcast, was it like 4 years ago or so?
It was roughly 3 or 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, roughly 3 or 4 years ago. We talked about semen retention, which is a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
But today I want to talk about, and Nakula Das actually reached out, we should talk about pornography because this is a really prevalent epidemic in our community, in our society at large, but also in our devotee community as well. I think that devotees shouldn't be naive about this, that everyone is struggling with this, with a pornography addiction, or you could say even the exposure of that to children, teenagers, everyone in our over-sexualized society of social media and all that stuff. Everything points there, actually.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have a conversation about that. I actually said the word, but I'll say corn from now on, so YouTube doesn't, flag me for anything. I think there's a whole group of people and a whole movement online against corn, actually. And I know you're part of that too. Like you're a big part of that. And so for people who don't know, there's like people who are totally against corn and corn addiction and all that stuff. So I think it's really important that we as devotees talk about it also, because I know for a fact that some senior devotees in our movement have admitted to having that kind of proclivity to watch that. And it's about time that we brought it out to the open and not, feel shameful about it. But actually, when you drag the problem into the light is how we can start fixing things, right? And what was the other thing I wanted to start with? It's that, and also, how to deal with it. And I know you deal really closely with people in dealing with that kind of addiction. And we can even discuss what does it mean to be addicted. Like we had that conversation yesterday. Yeah. Do I even know if I'm addicted to corn? Like, I don't even know. So we can even talk about that as well. So that's my intro, and let's talk about, do you have anything to say before I get into the rest of it?
No. First of all, I'm just laughing a bit because of the corn thing, because we were talking before, like before we came live here, is like people are going to be like, what's wrong with corn? Like, should I not eat corn? Right?
Yes.
And the other thing is like, I call corn the, I was like, oh, it's the elephant in the temple, and I ain't talking about Ganesh. Right. It's like,
that's funny.
It's kind of like, it's like, you go to the kirtan, or, you go to Sunday feast or whatever, and you're like, you come home and then you're like, oh my gosh, right? And a lot of guys, what I'm talking about, right? And I do say guys more than women, even though statistically there is actually a rise of even women watching. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the devotee community, but just overall in the general population.
Yeah.
We actually see a rise in women also now indulging more and more in corn. And I can't hold like straight face, be like, they're eating lots of corn. It's not good. Right. And so basically viewing adult content and how it's affecting and skewing our mindsets, our perceptions on intimacy, on lovemaking, on sexuality, and especially as devotees, how does that block us from actually increasing in our Krishna consciousness and getting closer to God, which is the ultimate goal?
Yes, awesome. So I just put in ChatGPT, can you give me some statistics about corn? And maybe I'll go first with really briefly, and I know you have some stuff too. So over 40% of internet users access corn monthly. Approximately 70% of men and 30% of women report viewing corn at least once a month. Age of first exposure, 11 to 13 years old.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate based upon the guys that I work with. One of the general questions I ask the guys that come through our training is, so I'm like, how long? What's on your average use on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
So first I get what's their average use, and then I ask them, how old are you? You know, so let's say they're like, I'm 30 or 40. Okay, great. And when did you start? And I would say at this point, you know, anywhere from 10, 11, 12 seems to be across the board average from when people are starting to watch. And that's, of course, because we have cell phones these days. And,
Yes.
you know, the older generations, they didn't have that. They weren't, you know, you had to go to like, you know, you had to put your hood on and go to like some back room and be like
Tower Records.
totally the back room. Yeah, totally. And be like, when no one's watching, hey, go distract the person. And then like, you flip open, you saw like boobs and you're like, oh, and put it back, you know, that type of thing.
Right.
But yeah,
That's funny that you say that. It says smartphones account for over 70% of porn content consumption.
Wow. Yeah, that I could see that. There was somebody just in my province in Canada where I live, someone sent me a message. A teacher was fired because they were in class watching porn. So the class is going on, the teacher is watching porn, and a student came behind them and filmed them watching porn. And then, of course, you know, people found out, and that got, you know, obviously that person got in trouble. And I thought, man, you couldn't even wait till you got home, bro. Yeah. Like, come on, right? You know, it's like, but that's actually, it shows, you know, that's one case of many, many, many cases that shows how much it's a problem where, like, you really couldn't wait till you got home.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you were just so like mindless. I would imagine just being mindless about it.
Yes.
And just watching. And of course it can be very secretive too on your phone, right? You know, your phone is kind of an intimate place, right? It's like, you know, nobody knows what I'm doing on my phone, right?
It's just you, yeah.
It's just you and your phone. And so the ability to go into really dark places and almost have this secretiveness about it is there. Yes. And that's one of the work that we're doing. And one of the, I would say overall, let's say advocacy parts of what we do is just advocate for it to be in the open, you know, like talk about it openly. Like,
yes.
I'm so open about sexuality and everything. The reason I'm like that, and I like to be light about it and just like, you know, is because it breaks the taboo. It's like, well, if Nakula can go on and talk about how he jerks off and he's done all this craziness, why can't I? I'm not saying you have to do what I do or anybody has to do what I do necessarily, but it's purposely done that way to break the taboo and to get people talking. Because again, if there is, and now, you know, especially the devotee community. So we are officially Nakula training grounds. Like when we first did when I first was on the show, I was the semen retention army and stuff, right? And that's how we kind of came out. We've evolved a lot. It's been 4 years, and we've literally trained thousands of men now. And we work with men. So we're Nakula training grounds, and we're an interfaith men's ministry, specifically helping men master their S3X energy. And so a large portion of that is helping men with pornography. And then there's upscales to what mastery of sexual energy, all the way leading up to men to lead to eventually wanting to be in the renounced place later in life, right? But the idea is that unless we talk about it openly, it stays the elephant in the room. Yeah. And when it's secretive, there is even more, let's say, pull or energy that it's given. Like when we have secrets, when we do something in secret, especially if we have a lot of shame around it, it drags us down vibrationally or energetically, emotionally more. Yeah. And so one of the things, you know, that our students, you know, they love about it is they're like, man, I can come here and just be like open. And they're like, so I can come here. I'm like, no, you can't. Yeah. Not here, boy. Yeah. Right. But it's like, we should just talk about it. Like, hey, you've watched porn? So have I. There, it's out the room. I remember I did a live talk to a bunch of business people, right? And it was on the mysteries of sex transmutation, right? And so I just started the talk off with, hello, everyone. I have watched pornography. And statistically, so have all of you. And then the people started laughing, right? And I'm like, okay, good. We good?
We good, yeah.
We good? No one's freaking out? All right. Now let's talk about it, because statistically, I don't know individually, but statistically, we've all done it. So let's just now talk about it so we can have a mature and educated conversation, and that we can really get to like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Or why is this detrimental, or why is this should be addressed? You know?
That's so good. Along the same lines, nearly 93% of boys and 62% of girls have seen corn before turning 18.
Yeah, there was
So if someone is saying like, oh no, my kid doesn't do it, or I never done it. No, listen, hold on a second. This statistic says otherwise. 93% of boys, 62% of girls.
Yeah. There was two stories that comes to mind. One is there was a study, I believe it was the University of Montreal. This was back in maybe early 2000s. I can't remember exactly. Someone could probably verify this, but they tried to do a study of, the effects of corn on the brain, right? Mm-hmm. And to have a scientific study, you need a control group. Well, they couldn't do the study because there was no control group.
Oh my gosh.
So they were insane. They're like, we can't do the study because we don't have a brain that hasn't watched it.
Wow.
So we can't really legitimately say, here's a brain who's never seen it. So that's what the brain looks like, who's never seen pornography, right? Yeah. And here's a brain that is. So they're like, we just couldn't do the study. And then another story that comes to mind is a woman reached out to me. She was just kind of like thanking me for the work that we're doing. And she said, I got to be honest, I was so naive. I was like, not my son. He's a good boy. He's a Christian woman. He's a good boy, good Christian boy, Yeah. And she said one day she goes on the computer to help something, looks at the browser history.
Oh, man.
And was just mortified by what she saw. Right. And so she's like, because she reached out to actually ask me, like, how do I address this? Like, how do I even sit down and have this conversation? Right. So I gave her a little bit of coaching and help to be like, here's how you facilitate a healthy conversation around it. Right. But yeah, the naiveness is a huge part of the overall problem.
Yeah.
Right. And especially in like hardcore, let's say very conservative religious groups.
Yeah.
It's because I have guys that come on to me and they're so scared. Like they're like, you can see they're like looking around. They're like, okay, I'm alone. I can talk about this. Mm. And I'm like, okay, cool. What's up? And they're like, I've been masturbating. And I'm like, yeah, me too, bro. And it's like, but you could see they're so scared. Nakula, you're not going to tell anyone, right? Like, please don't tell anyone.
Right.
I'm an ashram leader, men's ashram leader.
You're talking about devotees?
Yeah, devotees.
Oh gosh, yeah,
devotees.
Yeah. Oh,
I've had it in non-seculars, but devotees specifically.
Yes.
Out of all the groups I've worked with, and I work with anybody, I don't care. I'll work with an atheist, interfaith, but human. I don't care if you're atheist. You shouldn't watch porn.
Right.
Corn. Sorry.
Corn.
right. You shouldn't do it. Right. So I'll work with anybody who's interested in improving themselves.
Yeah.
But generally no atheists are coming to me. Because here's another thing too. And this is why I'm also reaching out to all faith groups, because this is something we actually all agree on.
Oh, yeah.
All faith groups actually agree on, this is bad. And the lowering of consciousness and the illicit S3X principle, hand in hand. So whether you're Jewish, you're Christian, you're Hindu, you're whatever it is, actually we all agree on that point.
Yeah.
And so I find this to be a very unifying conversation amongst faiths.
Right.
And so I'm working with pastors, I'm working with priests, right? I'm having conversations with rabbis, with imams, and like it's like really open to like, oh, we need this. Now, what I have found though, out of all groups, the Hare Krishnas, I'm just going to say what my perception, right?
Totally, yeah.
Is we're the slowest on this. Like we are so taboo around S3X.
Yeah.
And I think not everyone, I'm paintbrushing.
Yeah.
But it is causing an unhealthy relationship with S3X, and it's causing a lot of guilt and shame and misunderstanding and like, oh my gosh, I can't admit that I've got this issue. And because I can't admit I've got this issue, I'm just trying to go at it by myself, and that's not working.
Yeah.
It's just not working.
I remember you made that point that Christians are so light years ahead. Like a Christian group is so light years ahead of Hare Krishna in their progression of like dealing with this issue and talking about it openly and having support groups and things like that. While, you know, a big shout out to, you know, Jai Jagannath Prabhu and yourself for kind of like breaking open this topic in the Hare Krishna community. I think that's so fantastic that you guys did that. Like, you know, years ago, like when they were doing that Bodhika podcast and when you were on mine thing. And so, yeah, like, why are we so behind? Why is it so taboo?
Well, I think that, you know, kind of our, and, you know, I think that our philosophy is like, don't stoke the fire. Right. Which I'm not saying that that's false. Right. But what I am saying is the fire's already stoked, right?
It's raging.
It's raging. It's like burning, man. It's like, this is a raging fire. So the idea of not stoking the fire, I think context doesn't make sense for our age of where we're living, where, you know, like I was driving around New Jersey today, just checking out, you know, and it's just like, it's in the billboards, right? It's just like, even on the subtleties, right? So it may not be hardcore corn, but it's a half naked woman who's selling the perfume, or there's some model, you know, type of thing. I went on Facebook today, and Facebook generally has been pretty tame as far as my feed and everything. But then all of a sudden there's like kind of like, you know, one of those like kind of Japanese girls dressed up like anime character, you know, very provocative, right? So it's like, oh, unfollow, right? Like not, what do you call it when you click it, right? Like to exit or whatever, right? And it's like, whoa, like where did that come from, right? Because my algorithms are clean, right? But still, it's there, right? Maybe I looked at something, maybe I browsed over something, and they're like, oh, boom. So the fire is raging.
Yes.
So I think that the mindset is that don't talk about it, and then it won't be an issue because you're not bringing attention to it. However, I guess maybe I'm, you know, just challenging that a bit and saying it's already in our attention, whether we want it or not. So rather than not talking about it, let's bring it into the open. Let's talk about it in a mature way, an honest way.
Totally.
And that way, it's like relief right away. As soon as you start talking about it, it's like I've had guys come through our 30-day corn-free challenge, and they're like, man, I went 30 days since I was a teenager without watching it, without self-pleasure. And largely it was because like I finally just talked about it. Like I finally just opened up and was just like, man, I finally have someone to go to and be like, yo, you know what? I'm actually struggling with this. And I'm like, cool, man, like you and the rest of the world. So now we're over it. Let's deal with it. Right.
Yes.
And so I think a large part of it is just talking about it openly. So I think that generally the idea is that if we don't talk about it, we don't make the samskara, we don't bring it into our awareness, so therefore it's not an issue.
Yeah.
And maybe that's true. Maybe the older generations, they didn't have to, again, the older generations, like there wasn't cell phones where you just had like this stuff.
Literally like a few buttons away from it.
Yeah. And like there's some stats around how much of internet. Oh, okay, I'll give you a story. So I was doing a project for, I think it was in high school, and I was doing a project on Greece, like a report or something on Greece.
Yeah.
So I went to www.greek.com. Well, Greek.com, I don't know if it still is or not, was a Greek porn site.
Oh my God, they got the domain.
They got the domain. They bought the domain early.
Crazy.
Greek.com is, you know, Greek people doing it. I was like, oh, they do it differently than in Italy, you know, right? Right? How do the Greeks do it, right? You know, right? It's like, okay, so the amount of actually unwanted exposure is tremendous as well. So like, again, like just, was it either today or yesterday? Again, I was like on Facebook, I was posting a reel, and then there's this like, you know, kind of half naked anime kind of dressed up woman.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, well, you know, unclick that. But it's like, so the unwanted exposure is there. So rather than just doing the avoidance thing, you can't avoid it.
Yeah.
Not in this age.
Just want to interject a second. Many children encounter porn accidentally through internet searches.
Yes. And many guys that have come through my trainings have told me that they were exposed to it at such young ages, either accidentally, they were on the internet and some ad popped up, or they clicked here, clicked there, and next thing you know, they were into a site, or an older sibling introduced it to them as like a joke, like, hey, come here, watch this.
Yeah.
Right. You know, but not realizing how, because S3X is our highest stimulant.
Yeah.
Right. How much it makes an impression in our subconscious mind. And then it becomes the way that we associate like arousal. And then we think, oh, arousal. Great. How do I deal with arousal? I go onto the hub, right? I go onto the internet. So, and what ends up happening is over time, we reinforce this habit, arousal, self-pleasure, and then depletion of energy. And then generally there's like, now this generally only happens more in spiritually conscious men. Then there's a feeling of like shame or guilt and regret. And that's actually the addiction cycle, right? So you get aroused, you do the act, then you feel shame cycle, you feel bad about yourself. Now you're reinforcing a self-image. I'm not a good devotee.
Yes.
Krishna's mad at me.
Yes.
I'm a horrible person, which actually then feeds a feeling of loneliness. And then how do you just escape from the loneliness again?
Do it again.
Do it again.
Circle.
So now you get into this really downward cycle. And the problem is, as time goes on, you know, what might have been two people making love, it goes into like, you know, like the weirdest, like, you know, midget orgy or something. Like, like you get into these weird, one of the number one looked up content is, I'm not going to say the word for the algorithm, but it's RAPE, right?
Oh, really? Grape.
Yeah.
Grape.
Yeah, it was a grape. Yeah. No corn, no grapes. right. Yeah, grape.
Really?
Grape.
That's
It's huge. One of the like
really?
I didn't know that. Yeah, I've had guys that come through the training as well. Like, Nakula, I'm scared. I haven't acted upon anything, but what I'm watching is evil.
Wow.
It's evil stuff. And now what happens is the arousal, which is a natural biological urge, is now being associated with grape, is now being associated with dominance, control. There was a woman and she was giving a statement. It looked like she was giving a statement in front of like a council, some kind of governing body.
Yeah.
And she was talking about a 13-year-old boy raped his sister, younger sister. When they were interviewing the boy, like, what compelled you to do this? He said, I was watching Korn and I just couldn't get the imagery out of my head. I was just couldn't get it out of my head. And it was like 2-3 in the morning. So he goes into his sister's room and, you know, grapes her. And like, you just imagine the heartbreak. First of all, that 13-year-old boy, which a lot of people aren't going to feel compassion to, but I do. He has to live with that for the rest of his life. The chances of him having a good life is like really far from happening, right? The girl has to live with that for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
The parents, like, you just imagine the heartbreak and the scenario. And there was the story in India of, I think it was 9, there were like 9, 10, 11 boys raped a younger girl.
Yeah.
and they were trying to get her to watch Korn.
Really?
They were trying to get her to watch it. She didn't want to watch it, blah, blah, blah. And then they ended up, doing what they did to her. Again, like, this is, of course, these are extreme cases. I'm not obviously saying that everybody who watches, the average person who watches Korn isn't going to go out and do that.
Yeah.
But it does lead to those types of thoughts. And what it does lead to is more hardcore stuff. Right. I've had guys tell me, Nakula, I'm straight, but I'm watching a same S3X content.
Right. Like homosexual
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. I'm watching homosexual content. And that's because it has to do with the dopamine that you get and the stimulation that eventually you need something more hardcore, just like a drug.
But just like a drug.
Just like a drug. It's like, oh, you smoke a joint, you're high. But now you smoke a joint and you don't get the same. So now you need a little bit more.
You build tolerance to it.
You build tolerance. And that's what's happening. So we've built tolerance. Our whole society is like that. Like, I was out for lunch today with one of my students and he said like, yeah, like he goes like on Netflix and he's like what's PG-13 used to be like rated way higher.
Yes.
Like they're fully swearing.
Yeah.
There's almost nudity, if not full nudity.
Yeah.
And it's rated for like, oh, this is fine for kids.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, the rating. So our tolerance as a collective consciousness, our tolerance for adult content is so high, we can't even identify anymore how far gone we've gone to this. And in my own journey, I only started, as I started weaning myself off of this and started really trying to follow the illicit sex principle in a really more strict way, did I realize how much it actually had a grip on me. Like I was like, whoa, like this is way tougher than I thought. And that's, largely what got me into this work, right? Which was like me trying to figure this out for myself.
Right. Two things. The neurochemical effects. So exactly what you were saying, corn consumption triggers a surge of dopamine, the reward chemical in the brain. This reinforces the behavior and encourages repeated use. Over time, the brain may require more intense or novel stimuli.
Yes.
To achieve the same dopamine release, potentially leading to desensitization. Like other rewarding behaviors, frequent corn consumption can lead to tolerance, requiring progressively more extreme or novel content to achieve arousal or satisfaction. What you're saying is proven here. Like,
yeah, there's enough. Like, I mean, like, so part of the advocacy work that I'm doing is we're starting to write legislation around pornography and limiting its use. And I know Texas, for example, in Texas, so when you go onto a site, let's say the Hub, right? Because that's the #1 site in the world, right?
Pornhub, yes.
Yeah. So
Pornhub.
Yeah. So when you go on there, there's just a little thing that's like, are you 18? And you click yes. And that's it, right? It's like, so there's basically no restriction to it, right? But I believe in Texas, you have to actually put in your ID.
Right.
So they have to verify that you are 18. Right. So that's a great starting place. And that's something that I would like to see happen everywhere. And so as we continue our work and and this is what one of the reasons I reached out and I wanted to come back on the show was I was hoping that there's very, very intelligent and smart devotees out there that, are equipped. They're lawyers. They can help in this regard.
Oh, totally,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm hoping that some of them will see this and reach out and say, hey, Nakula, we can help with that advocacy work. And I'm also hoping that all faith groups, but I really believe that Vaishnavas, with the standard of the philosophies that the Vedic knowledge has, that we also become the standard of like the illicit sex principle.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, will restore so much balance into our world, right? And so, yeah, I'm really hoping that people jump on board with this and help with this. But part of it is, so from a government perspective, there can be more restrictions and education around this. And there's enough science that we don't have to even, I said be Bible thumpers, Gita thumpers, or whatever. Gita thumpers.
I've never heard that before.
Because you ever heard of the Bible thumper?
Yes,
right?
I've heard of the Bible
so like,
thumper.
the Gita thumpers.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to take that approach for this, right? We could talk about the spiritual pieces of it because I love talking about that aspect of it. And for me, that's what it was all about. And still at its essence is what it's all about.
Yeah.
However, for the general population, there's enough science where we can simply advocate the health crisis and the health issue that this is really having.
Beyond all the spiritual stuff.
Beyond, yeah. So someone, and that's why I said someone who's atheist can understand why still that they shouldn't indulge in corn, because there are major health issues that come along with it. And so just like on like cigarette packages, I know we were talking about that last night, right? Like on cigarette packages. So when you buy a cigarette package, they've got like the nasty pictures of like, you could potentially get erectile dysfunction.
Right.
They have that on cigarette packages. Well, that is even more true for pornography. Right? The rewiring of the brain, the damaging of your neurotransmitters, the damaging of your dopamine receptors, how it actually rewires you. There's long-term studies that show that with excessive use, the prefrontal cortex, or the gray brain matter, is actually reduced or shrinks. And the prefrontal cortex is what determines good decision-making.
Wow.
And compulsive behavior. So what's really interesting is that the more you indulge in corn, the chances of you overeating, the chances of you smoking or eating crappy foods, all are going to increase the more compulsive you become.
Yes.
And that's like the furthest thing from sense controlled. Right. And so, the more that we can understand this at a level of biology, then we can reach the masses. And then those who are interested in growing closer to God and who understand the spiritual significance behind this work, you can understand that this will directly push you towards God. I've watched guys on YouTube. So you talk about the movement, no FAP and semen retention movement, which, I'm definitely a big face in that, right? And so I've watched guys on YouTube, guys that I've seen, and, they start off and they're like, man, no FAP, I'm not watching corn, I'm not jerking it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Women love me, and they're like so attracted to me because there is a science of attraction behind that. And, and a self-controlled man is an attractive man. And there's all these qualities that someone gets from controlled S3X energy.
Right.
This is what Napoleon Hill talks about, the mysteries of sex transmutation in Think and Grow Rich. This is the part that he hones, which is that actually men who can do this, they can become wealthy, they can become genius. Whatever their creative expression is, they are going to amplify that expression big time if they're not depleting and wasting their energy, if they're not being chased by their base desires, right? They have to rise above it. But specifically, I've seen guys start off, you watch their channels, and just like my channel, like if you watch it over time, you could probably see the evolution of my energy, like chilling out a little bit, again, maturing in the messaging, maturing in it. And it's like, so I've seen these guys mature. And so they start off with like, women love me. I can get as much of it as I want because I'm so controlled and They can smell the pheromones on me, right? They're just loving it, right? They're like, women love me. To like, yeah, I've been going back to church lately, or I've been going to mosque lately, or I've been going to temple, I'm reading, I'm discovering God. So it went from I'm doing no FAP because women love me, which is like the first maybe start of it,
right,
to like this natural progression as their as their S3X energy becomes as they rewire themselves and they start to loosen the lust up. And then they start to feel more the peace of chastity, the more peace of a chaste mind, right? You're like, hey man, like, you know, I'm kind of really interested in like deeper things now. Right. Like, yeah, it's cool that women like me, but like, okay, now what?
Well, now, yeah.
Yeah, now what? And they start to lose the taste. So what I've seen in my own experience, as well as watching other guys and coaching so many guys through this process, is I've seen how naturally there is a spiritual inclination that begins to be born. And someone who already has the spiritual inclination generally comes to work. They already have it somewhat. There's some scars have somehow led them to wanting to do this, but it really gets ignited once they become controlled in their S3X energy.
That's along the same lines as the Vedic paradigm as well, the perspective of the Vedas, and also the Vedic scriptures about how when one doesn't lose that energy, and instead of focusing it downward, one focuses upward, then that goes to the brain. Exactly what we were talking about, but you were saying on like a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
And the Vedic perspective is the same thing. That creative energy either is used for, should be used for like either creating children or a creative, another creative outlet. And in the case that you're talking about, either like, is it building wealth or making, increasing one's, a better life, a spiritual life and things like that. And so taking that up to the brain. Tell me what you were saying about the science yesterday about the spine and the brain. That was really cool.
Yeah. Dr. Flatto's work. It's what do you call like your main video on YouTube, like your channel video? You know how you can put one video
like an intro video.
Yeah. This is my intro video. So if someone goes to Nakula does on my YouTube channel, I did a video on Dr. Flatto's work. And Dr. Flatto talked about, he's talking about the science. So he's not a spiritualist at all. And he was just talking about the science behind it. But I want to answer that question, but I want to like kind of talk about something just quickly before that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because just going along with the spiritual aspect, there's an analogy I like to use just so people can understand when we talk about transmuting S3X energy, right? Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
So, if you look at it from like an alchemy perspective, everything is vibration, everything's vibrating. And the rate of something is, so I like to use the analogy of ice, water, and steam. Ice, water, and steam are chemically the same thing. But the difference between them is the rate of vibration. Right? So as we get to a lower vibration, it becomes ice.
Right.
Okay. So ice, call that lust. Water, call that creative force, power, energy, even mental attraction and ability. Steam, call that spiritual. Call that love. Okay. So we start here, lust. I'm going to start doing no fat semen retention. It's still lusty though. It's still like, I'm going to do this because women are going to love me. Right. Or I'm going to do this because I'm going to become more attractive. I'm going to do this. Blah, blah. So it's still, but because it's starting to loosen up, it's starting to boil, right? I like to use the analogy of boiling water. That's what we're doing. We're like boiling the lust, putting it through fire, transformation, right? So we're like, we're going to boil it. Then it's going to become water. And water is as it's rising up. So now it's no longer being put to the base chakras or the lower energies.
Yes.
It's now rising up. It's now going to be expressed as creative endeavors. I'm going to build my business. I'm going to create a podcast. I'm going to, whatever your natural disposition is. For me, it's like advocacy work, speaking, doing this. Like, this is like my, like, I can do this just all day long, right? So this is like my nature, right? So now I'm doing my nature. I'm advocating. I'm doing legislation. This is where I find, a lot of joy and creative expression. For someone else, it might be like their music or their art. What you'll find is that guys, will start to just come online with their creative expressions. They'll start writing books. They'll start whatever they're about. They'll start doing. A mechanic, he'll start building the most amazing vehicles. They asked Elon Musk about masturbation.
Really?
Yeah. So, and he's like, no, he says it doesn't even make sense from an evolutionary perspective to masturbate.
Right.
Like he's like,
Because you're just like, we're wasting the energy.
Yeah. This is something known amongst all elite men. Yeah. That's the like funniest part. Like when I get like hate or like people are like, oh, well, it's so weird, right? And I was like, dude, like you do realize like all the most successful people in the world, I'm using the word successful in a material context, but both spiritual or material, they do this. Steve Jobs was documented, known to have non-ejaculatory S3X, right? Something that I teach my guys. I got a lot of flack for that, right? You know, when we first did the podcast, oh, this guy's teaching S3X. I'm like, well, first of all, people are having it. I'm not teaching it. They're already doing it.
Yeah, right.
If you're listening to this, somebody had S3X so you could listen to this, right? It's like, relax, right? It's like, but yeah, he was known to do that because, and he was, it's documented saying his partner said, yeah, he wouldn't ejaculate all the time because he would hold that and be like, no, I need that for my wealth and my power. Like I need that creative force, that drive. Semen retention Pereira, not me. This was so my name is Nicholas Pereira. My initiating name is Nakula Das, right?
Yeah.
But my government name is, or Karmi name is Nicholas Pereira. And so I saw this article called Semen Retention Pereira, and there's lots of articles written about me when I ran when I ran for government in Canada, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so they used obviously my legal name, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought it was written about me, right? And I was like, oh, I haven't seen this one. Let me click on this one, right? My vanity. I'm like, oh, even if it's bad, I'm like, I still got to see it, right?
Yeah.
Right? Wasn't about me. It was about Alex Pereira, who's like UFC champion.
Oh yeah, Alex
right?
Pereira, yeah.
And if you see, I'm a UFC like fan.
Oh my
right?
God, so am I.
Oh, yo, love UFC, right? Like I've watched every fight this season. It's the only sport that I follow.
I have a devotee WhatsApp group of all devotees who are into UFC.
Oh my gosh. Add me to that. I did not know that even existed. Yeah. Please add me to that.
Every time there's a fight, they all come on and they're like talking about it, but then they're like, oh, you going to that kirtan? Like it's like all devotees, but they're like all guys and they're all talking about it. I'll add you to the group.
Yeah, add me to the group. I did not know that existed. That's amazing.
Alex Pereira, yeah.
So Alex Pereira, the reason I'm such a fan of his is not because we share the same last name. That just made me like an extra fanboy of his, right? But what I loved about him was, did you see the fight where he fought Hill?
I didn't see that one.
Okay. So anyways, there's this, he just like rips him apart, right?
Yeah.
But there's this right before he just like beats the crap out of him, right?
Yeah.
He gets kicked in the nuts and he doesn't move, right? Like the dude is scary. Like Pereira is
he's very scary, yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know if you saw the one, I forget his name, the last fight. The guy was like, you got to tell him to stop doing the voodoo, whatever he's doing. But like the guy was like
he does like that whole like thingy.
His thing.
He's
right?
like a warrior.
I love
Chama.
Chama, right? I love it, right? I'm like such a fan, right?
Yeah.
And why? And so they call him Semen Retention Pereira.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so I read this article, and it was because he uses semen retention as part of his training process. And I'm like, yeah, that's why he has so much vira, so much potency, right?
Yeah.
He's just boom. So, anyways, what made him that was even before I knew this. I just intuitively was like, man, this guy has so much focus, and I just admire that.
Totally.
Why I like MMA and the UFC. It's funny, I don't like to watch people fight. Like a street fight, I don't like it. I don't generally like violence at all. But I don't consider this violence. These are warriors. These are trained fighters, athletes going in. But what I appreciate about them is their bravery, their level of focus, their skill set.
For like 8 weeks, they have to be so focused to like do that training camp and all that. I couldn't do that. That's so difficult.
It's so difficult. I have a buddy, Christian Savoy. He just fought in Dana White's Contender Series.
Really?
So I helped him with some meditations and different things, like helping him prepare. And yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And the training camps are insane. Like they're insane. You think we're disciplined?
Oh, yeah.
These guys are like next level. So I just have a lot of respect for their craft. So anyways, Pereira gets kicked in the nuts, right? He doesn't move.
Really?
The ref is going to go give the timeout. He tells this to the ref. He literally tells the ref no timeout.
Really?
Like, I don't need it.
Oh my God.
He's like, I'm about to destroy this guy. His eyes did not move from his target.
Oh my gosh.
The guy must just like, if I was on the other side, I would be like crapping myself, right?
Yeah.
He just tells the ref with his hands, I got this. And then he goes like 2 minutes later, the fight was done because he just like ripped the guy apart, right? And I was just like, oh my goodness, this guy is insane. Like this guy is definitely operating on a different level than your average fighter.
Yeah.
And then it was like not too long after that, I saw the article, Semen Retention Pereira, and he talks about that's part of his training regimen. And I'm like, yeah, that's what gives him his vira. That's what gives him his potency. And he's, it's clear that he's tapped into something of a higher frequency. So point is, water, creative energy.
Yeah.
Your ice, lust. With pornography, it keeps you right in the ice. Low frequency, low energy. You're just depleting all your life force, all your energy. That's why you're feeling depressed. That's why people have social anxiety. It's why they don't have the courage to go after their dreams or to stick up for themselves or to speak their minds or to even serve at a higher level.
Yeah.
Because any guy knows once he's, finished, he's like, time to go to sleep.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And every time a man ejaculates, he releases prolactin in his system. So prolactin is like why you feel tired after. It's kind of like, oh, it's like nature's way of going, oh, okay, you've done your biological duty.
Yeah.
Go nap now.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I need to sleep. Right. And that's
But like overdoing that, like on a daily basis, sometimes I've read and heard of articles of people talking about like doing a number of times a day and things like that. That must be so damaging to one's body and like biology, right?
Yeah. And prolactin's a testosterone stifler. So you're not producing any testosterone. So therefore, over time, your T levels are going to drop. And as a man, as your T level drops, so does then your masculine qualities. Yeah. Right? That masculine potency that gives us drive to want to be successful, to want to be the next Elon Musk or the next, whoever, Srila Prabhupada or the next, whatever, right? Look at Srila Prabhupada, right? Like, I was like, this guy is insane. I'm like, he was 69 when he started.
Yeah.
Let's be real. He can out-energize all of us.
Yeah.
Right? 1 meal a day, just so focused.
He slept maybe like 2 or 3 hours a day.
Yeah. People ask me that too, because my sleep reduction has gone so down over the years,
Really?
right? Like I just sleep way less, right? Like I've done like 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep and then I just keep going. I'm full of energy. And people are like, how do you do it? And of course, my cheeky answer is I'm horny. I'm like, I'm really, really horny. But I've rewired my brain over the years to be like, but horny doesn't mean it's time for me to go on the hub and wank it.
Right.
Horny means it's time for me to go create water,
right?
It's like, it's up here now. And then as that energy continues to rise right up to the top, then steam, then it turns into spiritual power. Well, it turns into ojas, right? Ojas is aura, right? According to the Ayurvedic process,
Ojas, yeah.
Right? And what it does is it creates actually an auric field. And it strengthens your subtle or light body, which will become your immortal body or your spiritual body. So you're actually changing your physical body subtly as you become more chaste and you spend less time in indulgence in base desires into your spiritual body. And you're becoming now closer and closer to Krishna because Krishna is all spiritual and you're becoming more and more spiritual and therefore your consciousness and everything is purifying. So ultimately semen retention is part of the purification process. And in today's age, the number one enemy to that is corn, right? And so so vibrationally, lust and love are the same thing. I actually put them on the same spectrum, but just of different frequencies.
Yeah.
Lust is the lowest version of love. Hence why 90% of watching pornography is a desire for love.
Yeah.
It's actually why we chase so many things. And that's why our process of selfless service is like so beautiful, because the more you serve and the more you give of yourself, now you're thinking of somebody else. And now you're thinking, like, I don't have a devotee community physically around me, right?
In New Brunswick.
In St. John, New Brunswick, where I live, right? There is an ISKCON Fredericton that's about an hour away, and there's some devotees splattered around. But I was born Christian, right? So, you know, I think I was joking last night, right? People ask me, because I'm a bit all over, right? Like I wear the cross, I wear the T-lock. This has the Buddha on it. People are like, what are you? And I'm like, Hare Christian. Right? You know, right? They're like, wow, this weird. This guy's so weird. I can't, right? You know? And I'm like, I was just soul, you know? That's it, right? Yeah. It's like, you know, I think when we get too caught up in the labels, we start to miss the essence of it.
Totally, yeah.
That's something like, I don't care. Call me whatever you want. It's not the point, right? The point is that we become loving, right? Filled with so much love that what we feel is sacrifice right now, we don't even want to sacrifice. I was listening to actually a Christian preacher who said something really like profound. She said, it was a woman preacher, and she said, you don't have at the beginning, and we teach the same thing. It's the same thing, right? She said, at the beginning, you're following the rules out of like duty. She says, but actually the evolution of that is you want to follow the rules because you want to please God.
Yes. And
that it's like, you might follow NoFap or semen retention because you're like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, or like the guys are like, I'm going to attract more women, or I'm just going to become more powerful or whatever.
Yeah.
But it evolves to eventually like, well, I don't watch pornography, one, because I'm just so engaged in serving and helping people. So I do service at the local church, just right in my neighborhood. Church is like 3. I went there. I'm like, hey, I need a place to serve. Can I volunteer and help and do stuff? So I do service there, right? And I'm just like, it just fills my heart up so much that like, I just like watching pornography seems stupid. And I'm not calling people that watch it stupid. I've watched it. I get it. I understand the draw to it. But once you get a taste, a real taste for that transformation, that steam, and you start to feel that love of God just overpouring you, and you're just pouring out of you, and you just want to help people, you're just like, oh, that stuff is not needed. But I find like for myself, and I'm not perfect, I'm just saying, and it hasn't been an overnight thing. It's been slowly over time, just cleaning up, and then really taking on chastity to really experience a higher level of bhakti, right? Like, how can I experience just selfless love? And I'm not saying I've actually achieved that, but I so desire it. Like, I was like, oh man, if
you get a taste for it.
Yeah. I'm like, if what I've experienced is just a taste of it, because I know I have my own vanities and ego and all that stuff. And, you know, I'm very like open about that. Say like, hey, like, but man, as I feel it loosening up, I just feel so much better. And I can feel the material draws just not being as like, they're just not attractive.
Yeah.
It's just not attractive anymore.
Well, it says in the Bhagavad Gita about how when one gets a taste for the higher things, then those lower tastes, they naturally go away.
That, like, why would I want that?
You're operating on another, you're trying to always operate on a higher level, and you have a taste for that higher level. So then you're like, yeah, those things are not like, they're not tasteful anymore. And, you know, the indulging in corn is like a very selfish thing, because it like basically supporting the idea that I am this body and I'm a man and I want to enjoy someone in this way. And so that's why I'm acting in this sort of way. But when one gets away from that selfishness and thinks, okay, I want to do, like you said, selfless service. I want to do some service for God, for the devotees and things, then that brings you out of the center of that selfishness and puts something else in the center, which is Krishna or devotees and service. And so that's a way to think about it, to think about how we can get ourselves out of the center. And I feel like in my own life, having children was like such a way to get yourself out of the center. My God, like you're not the center. I'm like not the center of my life at all anymore.
Right.
And in some ways in the beginning, it was like really jarring.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like I'm not the center of my life anymore.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But now I wouldn't have it any other way. Because it's my taste is different now. It's like I just want to serve these little people and my wife and Krishna, and it's like my purpose, like you could say, in my life.
That's right. Yeah, people are so searching for purpose and like,
Yes.
there's books written about purpose and find your purpose and all this stuff. And it's like our purpose is so simple: serve others, right? It's serve others, right? And serve the devotees, serve other people. I don't care personally. Like I don't discriminate between this person, that person. If someone needs service, then like who doesn't need help? I need help. You need help. Like everybody needs help. And actually, I think what pleases God is when we cooperate nicely.
Yeah.
Right. Just like a father, when he sees his sons cooperating or playing nicely, they're like, it's just very pleasing to the father.
Totally.
So why would Krishna not be pleased? Why would God not be pleased when we cooperate together and we work out our differences? And now especially in, let's say, devotee community, I mean, like, we know that there's politics within the devotee community and all that stuff, but we should be the example to the rest of the world of how we can live unity and diversity.
Yes.
And embrace unity and diversity. If we can't do it, what example are we setting to the rest of the world of how amazing Vedic philosophy is, or how much gold there is inside of it?
Yeah.
Anyways, we're kind of
we are getting
we're like on track on a spirit, which I love. Like,
I love it, dude. I love it.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
nice. How does someone, like, if someone has watched porn, how do they know they're addicted and to the point where like, oh, I need help with this?
Yeah. And then remind me, because I didn't answer the question about Dr. Flato's work about the biology of it, but we can tie that into.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because I went on the whole vibrational tangent. Right. Reel me in here, right? So that's a great question. Just had a guy, he got on a call with me a couple days ago, right, and was like, "Yeah, I found you on YouTube," and I'm like, "Cool." And I was like, "What did you type in?" He said, "Am I addicted to corn?"
Wow.
And I was like, "So do you know or do you not know?" He's like, "I'm not sure." And I'm like, "It's actually more common than you think." I said, "Here's a really simple test. Have you tried stopping?" He's like, "Yes." "Did you stop?" He's like, "No." And this dude's in his 50s, by the way. So when people think this is just a young man's problem, it's not.
Yeah.
My oldest student, right? My oldest student ever is 70. Currently, I have a guy 65 coming through one of our training programs.
Oh my God.
65. And he's like, "Nakula, I needed you when I was 20. Where were you when I was 20? I'm like, "I wasn't alive." He starts laughing, right? We have always a good time, right? I was like, "I wasn't around, bro."
Oh, that's too much.
Yeah. But he's like,
Wow,
yeah. It's like, so people who are like,
the
"This is
parts
just a young
even
man
like this is
problems."
probably a really like this is probably a little bit too much, but like, do the parts even still work at those ages?
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you another story. So I was walking with a buddy of mine when I was 65, right? So we're on a hike, right? This guy's like ripped, 65. The guy will outrun most 20-year-olds, right?
Wow.
So we're on a hike. We're doing something called rucking. It's like a military style hiking where you put like weights in your back.
Okay.
So we're doing this rucking thing. We're like, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, like just my personality, right? And I'm just like, "Hey, bro. So like, you know what I do for a living. He's like, yeah, I think it's awesome, man. I'm like, yeah, cool. I was like, so you're like 65. He's like, yeah, I'm 65. I'm like, you still like, still about it? He's like, oh yeah, I'm good to go. Because he's got like 7 kids, married, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh yeah, I'm good to go, man. I'm like a 20-year-old. And then he said something to me that was really kind of profound. And this guy's, again, not spiritual at all, right? But I shouldn't say not at all, but he's
in the conventional sense.
Yeah, in the standard in which we'll call spiritual, right?
Yeah.
He said, sex is for the healthy. He said, think about it. He says, nature wants its healthiest specimens to reproduce.
Right.
He says, so actually arousal and attraction is for healthy people. He says, so the healthier you are, the more energy you're going to have for that. He's like, so I'm in great shape. I work out. I eat well. I'm good to go. Right. He's like, boom. He's like, everything works. I'm good. I was like, wow, okay, cool. It makes sense. And then based upon the things that I've learned from a biological perspective, it makes perfect sense, right? It's like, okay, cool. So, yeah. So anyways, so apparently, yeah, it still works, right? The question was, how do I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so very simple test. Try stopping.
Have you tried stopping?
And then you couldn't.
Yes.
Then you have, maybe I won't categorize it as an addiction. Maybe it is. But maybe I like to use the word vice.
Yeah.
Like if someone had asked me, were you addicted to cron? I would have said no. Even to this day, I'm like, no, I don't think so. I said, but I'll call it a vice, meaning I used it, I turned to it. And so maybe actually slightly there was an addiction there, but maybe it was just slight. So I think there's degrees. There's some guys who are like addicted, right? Like they can't stop, right? They want to stop. They're like, and they just cannot stop. That's how much their brains are been damaged. The good news is it can all be rewired. The beauty is anybody and everybody can get over pornography addiction.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that part.
Yeah, and the other thing about this particular vice and this principle is this one you can't avoid. Meaning, like, I give the example of like, let's say, okay, so one of our principles is no intoxication, right? So my biggest vice was marijuana. Like that was like my big struggle, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of easy in one sense because I just don't go to the parties anymore. If I know marijuana is going to be there, I don't go. The alcoholic doesn't go to the bar, right? You can avoid it, right? So you can, the gambler, don't go to the casino. Yeah. There's ways to protect yourself from the outside and be like, those are outside influences that are, can tempt me. S3X energy is coming from within you. You have to deal with your S3X energy.
Right.
There's no avoiding it.
Yes.
Right. There's no suppressing it. You can say I'm over it. And you can, I've trained brahmacharis who've come through our training, right? I've trained guys who want to put on the saffron.
Really?
But they don't feel they're ready because of this issue.
Oh,
so they've come to me and said, can you help? Like, I want to put on the saffron.
Right.
Can it, maybe your trainings can
help. That's so commendable, actually.
Yeah.
That that it's like they feel they want to be authentic with themselves.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. They're putting on this representation of our lineage, like this orange cloth, which is representing us.
Yeah.
And they want to do it in a really nice, that's so nice to hear that.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't a brahmachari, out of all people, why wouldn't a brahmachari be like, hey, I need some help with that if they're already wearing saffron? And if they're not, but they would aspire to wear saffron, that they do it in an honest way. Again, like real renunciation isn't that you put on the clothes of a renunciant, is that you actually are renounced. Yeah. Right. And that really, to me, means a transmutation. Right. Like you've actually transmuted that. And I don't think that we should, falsely put on, whatever, just to feel advanced, right?
Yes. The sad thing is that I don't know if they did this or not, but they couldn't go to their like temple president and be like, hey,
that's right,
I have the issue with this, and that's why I'm not going forward. Can you help me with it? They wouldn't know what to do. There's no training around this in ISKCON.
That's why I exist.
That's why you exist. This is beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. It's like, because here's the thing. Someone asked me, why did you get started in this? I was like, I don't think it was you guys last night. I'm like, somebody asked me, you asked me, right? Or something. Or last night in our conversation with your wife as well, I was like, how did you get started? Or somebody asked me, how did you get started in this? And I said, well, my own journey.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm not a monk. Look, first of all, I come from a very like Western style life, right? Like my heroes growing up were 50 Cent and Tupac Shakur. You know, we have like the D80s and right and everything. I was like, I had a massive like life-size poster of Tupac with his shirt up that says Thug Life and his middle finger up. I was like, so that's what I worshipped, right? You know, I might as well have been doing puja to Tupac, right? Right, you know, and then 50 Cent came in. I'm like, G-Unit, you know, right? You know, I'm like this, and the messaging there is, you know, bang and smoke. Now 50 Cent, I admire 50 Cent to this day, but for whole different reasons. He's been celibate for the last 10 years.
Really?
Yes, and he's very open about this. He talks about how lust has actually like how much it's costed him. Now he's a business guy, like he's
I've seen interviews of him recently. He's wearing a suit and he's like very sober. Like he seems very sober.
So sober.
Yeah.
He's his two best friends. He's got an interesting audio called Hustle Smarter, Hustle Harder, Hustle whatever, Hustle something, right? Blah, blah, blah. It's really good. I was like, I got to listen to this because again, I'm a 50 Cent fan. I can't stand rap music anymore. See how tastes change?
Yeah.
Like I can't listen to it. The whole thing is just like, I think it's funny, right? I'm like, I can't believe I used to think this was cool.
Yes.
Right? Like, you know, I used to try to mimic these guys and that just got me into weed and illicit sex. Like that's what that did. Right. And then I find out he's never smoked.
Wow.
50 has never, he's always been like that. And I'm like, you lied to me, brother. He's like, he's probably thinking that's you, that's on you, not me, right?
Right.
And but yeah, he's really sober, and he's actually never drank or never smoked. He says he was always about his money type of thing.
Wait, well, what about like find me in the club and it's your birthday?
It's all just entertainment to him. He's just pushing records on us innocent.
Oh my God.
Us innocents that we're not innocent, but on the ignorant.
Wow.
Yeah, the cheater gets cheated. That's what Prabhupada said. We're not innocent.
Yeah.
You want
cheaters and the cheated.
The cheater and the cheated are the same. Yeah. So you got taken.
That's wild.
He sold you a product and you bought it.
Yeah.
Because you wanted that life. You thought you were trying to be the enjoyer, right? And that's what he sold you. So, hey, I take my responsibility. I don't blame anybody for anything. I made my choices, and now I've learned, and I'm making better choices.
How did we get to this topic?
I have no idea. Oh, you asked me how am I addicted. Now we're talking about G-Unit. So anyways, 50 Cent is celibate. Oh, point is this, is that, so you asked me about addiction. I was like, you gotta, so all the rest of the addictions are like external. You can block yourself from them.
Yeah, this is internal.
This one is internal. So you have to deal with it, right? You have to transmute it. And ultimately, I find that when you're alone, this one comes up the most. And this is why, and again, this is why you can put on the saffron or you can whatever. And I've had guys tell me, like devotees, they're like, Nakula, do you know when I go to Kron the most, or some right after an ecstatic kirtan?
What?
Yeah, they're like, and I'm like, it makes actual sense.
Why?
Because you are in such love.
Oh.
And then you came out of the environment, and so the pendulum swings to lust. So you were dedicating all that to Krishna. And then you come home, and then you're like,
you want that again?
You want that ecstasy.
Right.
But because the mind is still perverted, the mind still isn't clean.
Right.
Now the pendulum swings to the opposite, which is lust, right? So vibrationally, think of like a music scale. Love is up here, Lust is down here. It's the same thing. It's the same instrument, but love, bhakti, is up here on the scale. Lust is down here. Spiritual world is up here. Material world is down here.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're having your ecstatic kirtan, you're feeling so much ecstasy and joy and blah, blah, blah. And then maybe you go home and you're back into the environment where you're, again, this is the rewiring of the brain. Your brain associates. So your mind builds libraries of association. So libraries of association simply means like, if I say the word Mexico, you might think like, you know, burritos or, you know, whatever, right? Whatever you associate with Mexico, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so your mind is always doing this. This is why we, you know, you look at someone and you associate something. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens is at a subconscious level, like this is what happened to me. So I started generally watching pornography when my wife would go to work. So when she still had a job, right? And she would go to work. I'd be like, great, my time to play.
Right.
And I'd go and watch. To the point where she would go off to work, I wasn't even thinking about, like I wasn't even aroused. I wasn't thinking about S3X. I wasn't, but then she just went to work and the wiring, the association is now, oh, all of a sudden now the brain goes, hey, this is conditioning.
Yes.
She goes to work, you go on the hub. It's like, oh, well, I didn't even want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, might as well.
Right.
Right? Because that's conditioned. That's a conditioned, right?
Yes.
So that's what ends up happening. The old conditioning is still there. So now you're feeling all this joy, all this ecstasy from the kirtan, and then you're going back into an environment which may subconsciously trigger an old conditioning, and then you go to the hub next. So you need to retrain your brain. It's not good enough to just like what I call white knuckling it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
I'm not going to do it. That's suppression. And suppression ultimately creates a swing back to some of the nastiest forms of illicit S3X. So the idea is that instead of just white knuckling it, right, and just like, I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to avoid it. If you have never been exposed to pornography and you grew up in a sattvic environment completely, then, hey, turn me off. You don't need me. But if you grew up the way I grew up, you're already, you grew up in ignorance,
right,
in the mode of ignorance. Maybe there was some passion there if you were fortunate, but mainly dominated of ignorance.
Yeah.
So now you have all those impressions. So when you just try to white knuckle it, what ends up happening is after about 7 to 10 days of retaining, you're going to get a testosterone boost. Mm-hmm. And that's going to, you're basically just going to get horny, right? To be just very blunt about it, right? Yeah. Because your body, your biology is like, hey man, like,
it's time to go.
Time to, be fruitful and multiply, right? Right? Go spread your seed, right? And your body doesn't know whether you did that for its actual purpose, which is to have a baby, or you did it down the toilet, right? It just triggers, did the deed, good job. So you're actually tricking yourself to thinking you're some Casanova, like, well, like this guy's going once a day. Whoa,
right.
Real ladies, man, right? Right. Mind you, your body doesn't know that you're just like watching a bunch of nonsense on pixels on a screen, right?
Yeah.
And so that's so what ends up happening is you get that testosterone spike and that boost, and that makes you even more aroused. And because it's being filtered still in the ice, the lusty mind,
yeah,
it gets even heightened more to like want lust. So at the beginning, when you start practicing retention, you become more lusty. So unless you have practices to transmute it or outlets to actually do something with that energy,
sure, yeah,
you're just going to struggle. So how do you know you're addicted? Really simple. Try stopping. Stop. Yeah. Oh crap, I can't stop. Good chances are you have, whether it's a high degree of addiction or just maybe a slight vice, but it's there. If you find that you can't stop, but you want to stop, then you've got an addiction essentially.
Something along those lines is that I've noticed that when devotees are celibate, like if they're a brahmachari or sannyasi and they get older, and you can tell that they've been celibate, they have like if they do it in the kind of sort of the wrong way, they come off like very hard-hearted or angry.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
But then there's those people who I've noticed who have been celibate for many years, but they're like incredibly, insanely loving and personal.
Yes.
And so you're saying that there's a right way to do it, and there's the way to transmute it and like create like love from that. So I guess what my question is now is, how do we avoid like becoming more angry and hard-hearted because that energy is not being like used in the proper way, even though you are celibate, but you're like angry, you know? Cause like I've experienced that.
Me
like
too.
you just I think people have it. And then, but then there's the way like, so like, do you ever have to deal with that? Like how to not be angry?
Yeah, well, 100%. I would say that, you know, we call that like, you know, just like sexual frustration, right? Or the anger, right? Yeah. And even I believe there's a line that where Krishna says like lust turns into anger.
Yes.
Anger turns into like, and there's this whole degradation process, right?
Yes.
So that particular verse is indicating this process, right? So
When lust is unfulfilled, it turns to anger.
To anger, yeah, that's right. So what the anger piece is, and I've definitely had that in my own life, is that actually you're retaining, but you're still lusty. So lust isn't just the physical act. You're still really desiring things, right? Like, okay, now I'm just lusty for fame. Give me more fame. Now I'm lusty for power. Give me more power. Like,
yes.
So lust isn't just have to be the physical expression, right? There's lust for food. I mean, how many people transfer their lust to food? And so they're
it's like acceptable in some ways.
Yeah, they're celibate, but in other ways,
going hard on the gulab.
just in that, yeah. Bring another plate. You bring another plate, another 2 plates. Just keep it coming,
that's
right?
a lust. That's a lust.
It's a lust, right? So it's like, and again, like, hey, you know, all power to you. We all have our own lusts, right? So in the sense of that, so you have to deal with your lust overall, which is that lust just gets transferred, right, to something else until it's really purified, right? And so the anger, frustration is that the lust is, so while the celibacy is there, right, there's still some lust, and that is not being fulfilled. So the frustration is there, the hard-heartedness is there.
Yeah.
So what the individual, and I've definitely, you know, have to deal with this as well, is like, okay, where am I being lusty? So I'm just going to use a personal example because I always just find it easiest just to talk about my own experiences,
sure.
right? Instead of as like saying somebody else. So for me, I started practicing retention and such, and then I became super lusty for sex, right? Like where I was just like, I just want to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Just all the time. You know, and just
Because of retaining it?
Because of retaining. So it's just like, it just brought out, because what semen retention does is it brings up what's in the subconscious. And the subconscious is the heart.
Totally, yeah.
So it brings up what's in your heart, which is good.
Yes.
Let's take a deep dive into your heart and let's see what's really in there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what retention does. So I liken it to like, if you want to clean up the ocean, so it's kind of nice to go on the surface of the ocean and be like, oh, look, we cleaned it up. Yeah. It's nice. But then if you dive a little bit deeper into the ocean, then you got all the plastic and all the crap we're pouring in there and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, this is way down there. So you can't see it because it's way down there. Yeah. So what happens with any kind of chastity, any practice around chastity, is it will start to bring up, as that energy travels up to the heart, it starts to open up the heart, which actually means it's going to bring up your deep stuff. So what it brought up for me was tremendous amounts of lust, desiring S3X. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I tried to act upon that in you know, like, you know, and like, you know, just like, oh yeah, we can do all this like stuff and blah, blah, blah. Then just realized like, there's nothing there. Right. You know, then it's transferred to like, well, I'm just going to get really famous now. I'm just going to be so famous, which is just another form of lust. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once I started recognizing that, I was like, oh my gosh, dude, like, would you chill out? And then I recognized, okay, what is it that I really want? Oh, and this is where, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't avoid the spiritual conversation, because at the end of the day, what do we all want? God. what do you really want? What I really want is to be in relationship with God.
Yeah.
So why do I want fame, beauty, all his qualities?
Yeah.
Because you want him. But the material mind is, I want the quality, but without him.
Right.
Right. I just want, right. I want the fame, but I want me to be famous, not you. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Right? It's like, okay, I want the wealth, but I want it for me, not for you.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to becoming selfless again, where it's like, all right, man, how are you going to deal with this now? So I was like, all right, I can retain. I was that guy. I can retain. But now I'm feeling myself lusty in other ways. And then I felt myself being frustrated. And I know, because that line sticks with me, right? Mm-hmm. From lust comes anger, right? And it's unfulfilled. And I'm like, well, where am I being lusty? Oh, I want. So what I started doing is dealing with that. And one of the ways I deal with that, like for instance, I use social media. I restrict my social media. Meaning I make sure, like, I make my content, I make my posts, but I don't check the amount of views and likes and comments and all that stuff I get. I do check it once a week, because I have to, like, from a business perspective, there's like a growth, there's a practical aspect of why I check it, but I no longer check it from that place of like, did someone like this video? Does someone like this video? Does someone like this video? So then I started realizing letting that go. And then again, there's a form of just willpower restriction at first. And then it goes to, man, I just feel so much better.
Oh my gosh.
I just feel so much better not like being so obsessed with this. And then, but again, that energy has to go somewhere. And then that's where I recognized I need a place to be of service. And I was like, okay, I got to get myself plugged back into a spiritual community of some sort. Something that, and for me, it just had to be practical. So I'm like, okay, I don't have a devotee community around me, but there's a church right up the street. I was born Christian. I'm like, Prabhupada even said, if you understand, this will make you a better Christian. And I felt like that's true for me. I feel like a better Christian. Again, I don't care about the labels. I'm soul, right? But it's like, from a practical perspective, I'm like, I am today a way better Christian because of what I've learned from Srila Prabhupada and the Vedic knowledge. Right? So I go to church and I do my service there. And I just, so I worship and I do service and I clean and and it's so funny because I'm so fulfilled. Like I'm just feel so good. And it's because I don't want anything from the church. I want nothing from them. I donate, I do my service there. They've given me an opportunity where every Friday I do a little sermon, because they do this thing where they feed like a lot of like poor people, homeless people, this type of stuff. So I do an inspirational talk there every Friday for like a really like down and out crowd. This is the first time I've even mentioned publicly that I do this.
Wow.
Right. And just because we're talking about it, but I've purposely never mentioned it based upon, I'm like, I'm going to do this.
Just for the sake of
for the sake of this pleases God.
Wow.
And service. Yeah. This is the first time I've ever mentioned that. And it felt right. It's like, and that's how I've been doing it. So I do things and I don't tell people about it because I'm facing my own desire for, hey, I did something good.
Yeah.
Somebody recognized me.
Yes.
I did something good. Somebody recognized me, but rather just trying to please God. And I felt that as I've continued to do that and take that on as a practice, that my heart is much more at peace. And what I notice is that, again, the higher taste is there. So the lesser taste, like social media scrolling and checking to see, and how famous am I?
Yes.
Right? Right. It's just, it's like, it's cool, man.
That's
like,
so good.
I feel so satisfied in the work we're doing.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like, look at this. Like, what I get to come here. I'm travel to New Jersey. I've pictured this. Like, I've visualized, like, I know I'm going to get to travel. I'm going to get to meet cool people. I'm going to get to help people understand chastity at a better level.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to preach in the most unique way. Like, I've wanted all this and have visualized it and pictured it for so long.
Yeah.
And it's all coming into fruition. but God kept it away from me for many years. He kind of gave me glimpses, but he kept me on a tight rope in the sense of, he's like, what you're doing requires you to be at a certain level. Like, again, you can't just put on the robe and
like you got to walk the talk.
You got to walk it. Yeah. And I felt God held me accountable. Like, if I messed up, he would slap me. Like, I noticed, like, the rope gets tighter the more you ask for responsibility.
Yes.
Oh, you want to be big guru? Okay. You sure about that?
Yeah. Bro, right? I admire you a lot. You know, like, thanks for being you and doing, like, you're doing the Lord's work. I'm telling you, like.
Thank you.
That's really, really, I mean, like what you just said in the past 5 minutes, that's like super deep. Like some devotees, like who have been devotees for ages, like they won't even get to that level. They'll just stay on that base level, like about labels and you know, like not looking at something in a deeper way, but just looking, oh, like he's not following this strictly or this, you know, this label, and he doesn't look the part, and this and doesn't act like we need to look beyond all those things and like really get to the essence. Like I could hear it when you said, I'm just a soul. Like, let's just get down to the basics here.
Yes.
Like, really, the base thing is that we're souls, and we want something. We're pleasure seeking.
Yes.
We want something deeper. To get those deeper things, Krishna consciousness, service to others, service to Krishna is what's going to really satisfy the soul. And this whole corn thing is just a distraction from that, basically, for devotees.
Yeah. So, you know, Satchidananda, right? We're pleasure seeking, right? And we're eternal. We're full of knowledge. We're pleasure seeking. It's because we are pleasure itself, but not bodily.
Yes.
Right. This is why it's so uncomfortable, like to be in the body, right?
Yes.
Like it's an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
Because once you recognize, like, oh, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind. I have a body, I have a mind.
Yeah.
But then you're free. So, you know, people talk about freedom, right, from a political perspective, right?
Yes.
And you know, and you know, there's certain conversations around the politics that largely represent like freedom. Now, I was part of the quote unquote freedom movement in Canada, right? And I left. Not that I don't agree with it anymore or anything like that, but I recognized, oh, we're just as trapped as the same people we think we're fighting. Actually, I said, because the two coins, you're two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Put the coin down. Right? Just put the whole coin down, right? And look to real freedom. I said, if you want power, politics. If you want freedom, God. Real freedom, in my opinion, is in God, because God can set you free from the illusions from Maya. Yeah. So in the Vedics, we call it Maya. The Buddhists call it Mara, and the Christians call it Satan or the devil, right? Yeah. They're all pointing to the same, the force that keeps us in our lower nature.
Yes.
Right? And keeps us there. To use sort of Christian language, pornography is Satan's weapon. It's his number one weapon in this age. I really believe it. I believe it is Maya's biggest tool. Why? Because it totally keeps you, I even say it keeps you lower than the animals. Yeah. Because even the animals, at least they're self-regulated by, they're like, you know, they've got a season, a time, you know, exactly. They're like, oh, it's spring, you know, it's time to heat, you know, time to get it on.
Winter, we're going to sleep for 6 months. And
so their bodies naturally regulate
That's
them.
such a good point. Lower than the animals.
We're lower than the animals. Pornography is lower than the animals because at least the animals are regulated, right? And now here's another interesting story specifically around masturbation is, there was a study done around monkeys, and monkeys started self-pleasuring only when they were in captivity.
Oh.
So there's something potentially to say about the lifestyles we live and this need to self-pleasure. Because I'll tell you, like it's a boredom thing. Yeah,
like it's
boredom.
connected with that. Loneliness, boredom, isolation.
Yeah, and wrap those all up into the same kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Isolation, boredom, all this stuff. There's no way we should be bored.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's absolutely no way in this world that we should be bored with the amount of things to do, the amount of service. Like if someone's like, I don't know what to do, I'm like, are you really? In this day and age, like there's like probably more things. We have more options now than our parents did, and our parents' did. So it's not a matter of you don't have nothing to do. What it is your hormones are out of whack, and we are clearly not living a natural lifestyle.
Yes.
And because we're not living a natural lifestyle, it's now manifesting in different ways. So there's like what we call branch issues and root issues. The reason that I don't judge anybody for watching pornography, one, is I would feel like the biggest hypocrite.
Yeah.
Like a good evening for me at one time in my life was I'm going to hit the casino. Start there. Well, no, I'm going to start with a few joints. So that's no intoxication. Done. Broke that one. Then I'm going to hit the casino. We're going to order a steak dinner. And then we'll hit the strip club when we're done. And that was like the pinnacle of a good night. Like Friday, this is what we're doing, right? And then you meet the devotees and they're like, yeah, you need to do all of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
What? This guy's crazy. But he looks so happy, so I'm not happy. So maybe we'll find something in that, right?
Yes.
You know? And so I don't think that, you know, just because you start following the rules or the regulations for a few years or a few lifetimes, that all of a sudden you're like spiritually superior now.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden you're like, you know, like, whoa, easy there, saint, you know, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that it's just important that we just chill out on like the saint, the like doing all the right things outwardly, if we don't get that it's about cleaning up the heart.
Yes.
Right. And that's what you were talking about. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
you're saying that some devotees don't reach that understanding or, you know, and one, I would say, well, maybe not this life, maybe it's a progression.
Yeah.
And at the same time, maybe we should also then question how we're presenting the information if we're not keeping the essence. If the secondary is taking over the primary,
Yeah.
then we're going to lose the primary.
Yeah.
And the primary is love of God, which then spills out into love of people. And love of people doesn't mean just this group of people and not that group of people.
It means everyone.
It means everyone. It means all living entities. Right?
That picture of the Brahmana who sees, the yogi who sees everyone equally. He sees the dog eater, the tree, the elephant. He sees them all the same.
Yeah, the same. What's the? He's part and parcel of God.
Yeah.
He's part and parcel. There's Krishna in a different form.
Yeah.
There's another part of Krishna. There's another part of Krishna.
Yeah.
Maybe just levels of interaction in the material modes.
Yeah.
Okay. More mode of ignorance. Mode of passion. Sattvic mode of, you know,
Goodness,
cool.
yeah.
But all part and parcel. So what's the deal? You know,
Yes,
let's
yes.
just be there, right? And then basically we can get to that place where then we can stop dealing with branch issues. So pornography is a branch issue.
What do you mean by branch
So
issue?
think of a tree.
Yeah.
A tree grows from the seed and then creates branches and creates the fruit.
Yeah.
If you want better fruit, you don't change the fruit. You have to go and change the seed.
Right.
So the branch issue means it's a manifestation of a deeper problem.
Yes.
It's not a problem itself. So stop making it a problem. Stop looking at the branch issue. Stop looking at pornography and being like, that's the problem.
Oh, okay.
So guys come to me and like, my problem is pornography. I say, okay, cool. And then I'll start to be like, are you single or in a relationship? I'm in a relationship. Tell me about your marriage. Oh, well, yeah, like me and my wife, we're not intimate at all. Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Oh, okay. Why not? Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and then you start peel the layers. And then it's next thing you know, it's like, my mom didn't love me and didn't like me. Okay, so that's the real issue is that when you're 5 years old, your father didn't show you enough love, your mother didn't show you enough affection, and this is now manifested into this problem.
Wow.
So unless we get to there, so the point is that where does the seed live?
Yeah.
In the heart.
Yes.
So the subconscious mind is the heart. As we transmute our energy, as that energy is put to different endeavors, it's going to bring up all of what's in the heart. And that's good, because only when it comes to the surface can we then actually clean it up. Mm-hmm. So to be like, why is that one guy frustrated or angry? Good chances are, is there still some things in his heart that he hasn't dealt with yet. So while he's celibate, he still may be mad that dad didn't love him, or he still may feel betrayed that the devotee was mean to him or said that thing that offended him.
So you're saying that indication will come out when one retains?
It comes up more.
It comes up more, so you can actually
deal with it.
Yeah,
because semen retention in itself is part of the purification process. So to purify, just like let's say you get a cut, the cut hurts, but what hurts even more than the cut is the healing process.
Right.
The next day it hurts, but the hurt is a good thing. Why? Because it's an indication you're healing.
Yes.
Right? So the pains in our heart, when they come up, we want to generally avoid it because we're pleasure seeking. We avoid pain. Hence why most people don't want to do the real tough work.
Yeah.
The real spiritual work, which is in here and sitting with themselves and sitting down with like their lust and their envy and their whatever greed, and saying, okay, guys, we need to have a real conversation. Like I see how you've been running the show, but.
So using your example, like when you're saying when your wife was away and then it triggered, how does that relate with what you're saying right now? Like as far as it being a branch thing?
Yeah. Okay. So the branch issue was that I actually, going back, I started watching pornography when I was in my 18, 20 alone. So like I would come home.
So what triggered it was being alone.
Being alone.
Right.
Where it would trigger it. It's like, oh, I'm alone.
Yes.
Boom. I'm alone. Parents go out. My first website was Nas.com. So for hip hop people, they know Nas, right? Nas, right? That's because people were home. Nas.com. The moment everybody was gone, the second website I visited was S3X.com. Right? So when I'm alone, this is what I do. When I'm alone, this is what I do. Now I've married. Now I'm alone. This is what I do. Oh, well, that doesn't feel right anymore. Right. Because now that's like, and now at the beginning, it didn't not feel right. Two negations because I didn't have consciousness around it. There's a reason why, even though I'm willing to work with an atheist, I have yet to work with an atheist, right? Because they generally don't have the consciousness about it being wrong.
Right.
Only what I've found so far is only guys of faith have a consciousness of it being wrong.
Wow. But isn't it, like scientifically, it says that it's just not beneficial, but I guess that's not wrong.
Yeah. It's not wrong moralistically.
Moralistically.
So actually, this is the advice I got. This was from a lawyer that out in Western Canada spoke to me specifically around like legislation and advocating for legislation. He basically was like, I don't think you're going to win it on the moral or spiritual level.
Yes.
Because we're an immoral. As a society, we're an immoral society, right? So when you're like, morally, this is wrong, they're going to be like,
who's this guy?
I don't care.
Yeah.
So they don't care. They just generally just don't care, right? Mm-hmm. He says, but where you can win it is on the level of health. Tell them that this is why, and this is the truth, not just telling them that, but tell them that their erectile dysfunction is largely due to their corn use.
Yeah.
Their inability to perform well in the bedroom, all right, is due to overuse.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a huge trigger for guys to get like, whoa,
Oh yeah, we need to fix that.
I need what? Okay, hold on a sec. Let me take a listen to this guy. All right, yeah, right, totally.
Right.
So from an advocacy to the larger population,
Yeah.
right? We're really gonna just go with the health conversation, right?
Right. Okay.
But for the thing is like I generally can't help myself but getting into the God conversation, and I see it as a beautiful bridge preaching program.
Oh, totally.
This is what I see. I see my role as bridge preaching to God. And I don't, because we're an interfaith men's ministry, I don't necessarily like here, this is a, you know, we're talking a devotee podcast. So we're totally, like, right, you know, but when I'm out, so when people follow me on Instagram and stuff like that, they might not see so like a devotee per se, right? Right. They'll see like I wear the cross. They'll see I wear this. They'll see I talk about Christ. They'll see I talk about Buddha, because we're an interfaith men's ministry. And I see my role as using illicit sex as the hook into deeper consciousness. And then once they come to deeper consciousness, then I feel like handing off the football in a way, like I hand off to the outlet that makes sense for them. So for some guys, it might be going back to like their Christian faith.
Yes.
For some guys, it might be going to temple. For some guys, it might be going to mosque. And we have guys in all faiths right now, and we all get along and we all learn from each other inside of our group, because it's, we're like, cool. We all just recognize that God is God. And most people that I've talked to of different faiths, there's always, in every faith, I've seen that there is like kind of like people that are quite like our way or the highway. This is it. Don't talk to anyone outside. And then there's like maybe more universal kind of mind, right? Which they see the different degrees or variations.
Yeah. I think we've established why it's bad, why people do it, why do people get triggered by to do it, statistically, that it's an issue that's widespread. Let's talk specifically about when someone realizes or identifies they have a certain trigger, and then it's triggered to watch it and to act on it per se. How do we deal with that? What's the first step of like retaining it and stopping the urge to watch it?
Yeah, great question. So first step is, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's their first step in their 12-step program.
Yes.
Is admitting.
You have an issue.
You have an issue. You have to admit it. Pretty much nothing can happen after that, right? Like nothing happens until that step happens.
Right. And specifically, does that mean admitting it to someone else or just admitting it to yourself? Because admitting it to yourself, I don't think is the same as like opening up and telling someone else about it.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's a distinction there. I think that, well, at first you have to at least admit it to yourself. At bare minimum, you have to kind of like face the reality, right? Yeah. That was for me with marijuana, as well as with pornography and just overall like obsession around sexuality, right? Yeah. Which is just like, this is an issue. And it was like the first time I remember saying this was an issue around like my marijuana habit. It was like, I like started like crying, because the first time, like I get emotional now, because I actually had to admit that I have a problem. Yes. It's vulnerability. And as men, we don't like that. Like, I'm masculinity, man. You know, right? It's like, that's not masculinity, dude. Masculinity is strength, and vulnerability is being strength, which means admit like we all need help in certain areas. It's all good, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think the first thing is admit it to yourself. Then the second, so we'll go 1A, admit it to yourself. Yeah. Okay. If you've done that, 1B, admit it to somebody else. And if you're like, who do I admit it to? You can connect with me. Many guys have admitted it for the first time to me, or have said, and I've had guys tell me like, Nakula, I'm about to tell you things nobody knows. Yes. I've paid for it. I've gone and seen prostitutes. I've seen hookers. Wow. I go to the strip club by myself when no one knows. Wow. Like, right. So I've had tons of guys like admit all kinds of things. I've had gay devotees come out to me for the first time. Wow. They're like, I don't know who else to tell, but I feel like I can tell you. I'm like, bro, I've heard it all, man. There's nothing that surprises me.
Wow.
I shouldn't say true, because sometimes until you get the next thing that surprises you, you're like, oh, whoa, really? Damn, man. All right. All good. But like, it's whatever it is, it's all good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, 1A, admit it. 1B, admit it to somebody else. 2, stop. Right? Now that's kind of like bad advice, but in one way it's like, this is the most simplistic thing. Stop it. And then what you'll see is how much does it have a grip on you?
Yes.
So stop it. And then, oh my gosh, like I'm struggling with this or blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Now get help. So step 3, get help. And so you can come to me. We have a 30-day porn-free challenge. It's been awesome. Like, tremendous.
So 30 days is enough for someone to maybe like loosen the grip on the thing? Okay.
Yeah, I'd say loosen the grip. So what happens is for 30 days, you get a video a day. They're like 2 to 5 minute long videos.
Right.
Okay. And they're specifically designed to, 1, build awareness around the trigger. So for me, I'm alone.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I'm aroused. I'm actually desiring connection, but I don't know where to get it. So I'm just going to the computer because I'm lazy, because everything in this age is lazy. Like I call pornography the fast food of S3X.
Right.
Because to have S3X, like, maybe you have to set up date night.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're like, you got to be nice that day, at least that day, right? You're like, yeah, I really want some tonight. So all of a sudden you're like, hey babe, looking good tonight. Right? Looking good today. You're like, and she already knows, because women are way more too. Oh, he wants some. Right. He's being nice to me today. Okay.
This is so funny that we're having this conversation. Devotees watching this going to be cringing in some sort of way, but like everyone is talking about this behind closed doors. Everyone's doing it. Like there's no secret here. Like just let's be real for a second.
Yeah. Come on. Everybody knows, right? And again, the more that you could talk about it, we're not talking about it in a derogatory way.
No, we're not. It's just being open about it.
We're just being truthful, right? Like we're just like, look, it's like, all right, babe. All of a sudden you're like, hey, you look good today. I'll take care of the dishes today.
Right.
She already knows, because she's way more. We're blunt instruments. We're just like, oh yeah, pick things up, put them down. I want it tonight. Let's right. She's way more in tune with. She's probably more in tune with how you as a man are than you are yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so, so you have to. So the first thing is building awareness of what triggers you. So again,
does everyone have a trigger?
Yeah.
So that's like across the board.
Yeah, I have yet to meet a person who's just doesn't. Like something triggers it.
Something
like, and it's generally subconscious. You might not even realize. Like I didn't even realize it was me being alone.
Right.
Like it didn't until I started doing the inner reflections.
Yes.
So that's what these videos do. So basically you get 30 videos. There's a workbook that goes along with it. And then there's a tracking sheet, which is set up like a scorecard.
Okay.
So it gives you a score of how you're doing, which is a motivation tool. Because once you start hitting the score, you're like, oh, I don't want, because you see 100%, 100%. You're like, hey, I don't want to do that. Now we've had guys, like we just had a guy come through the 30-day porn-free challenge. He did 78% was his score. That is actually really good from where he started. So we celebrate progress over perfection until we hit perfection.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, okay, great. Now what he's done is he's doing it again. And I'm like, great. Now let's do it again. This time, 78% is our low bar.
Yes.
Right. And so it's designed to build awareness around what are the triggers? Why do I do it? There are some forgiveness exercises around this. This is so important as part of the process. I'm like talking like exclamate, like huge point here as part of the process.
Oh, that's huge.
Forgiveness.
For yourself.
For yourself.
Yes.
Forgive it. Let it go. Like I see guys way too hard on themselves. Like just so extreme. Like they're like, again, like they mess up and they're like, oh my gosh, I've lost all Krishna's mercy. And I mean, I'm like, you know how loving God is?
Someone told you that? Like
yeah.
they say that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh,
Yeah. Like I've, like damn to hell, like I was like, whoa, you got some real like hardcore, whoever's been preaching to you is like, just like fear of God, right? Right? Which some preachers are like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like all condemnation, right?
Right. I know you were saying how merciful God is or how compassionate God is. It's the name of Krishna is Karuna Sindhu, an ocean of mercy.
Yeah.
An ocean. You know how big a freaking ocean is of mercy, of compassion?
Like, and think about like the gurus, right? Like think about like, I know who your guru is and my guru. Like these are some of the most loving souls that I've ever met. Right?
Yes.
I have a friend who's a pastor. He's like one of the most loving souls. Like, I was like, these are like, so if they represent God on earth,
Yes.
like, look how compassionate they are. Look how loving. Now, that doesn't mean you take advantage.
Yes.
And I understand that's why it's like, because the material mind is like just like a little bugger, right?
Yeah,
like just so sneaky. And just real devilish, right? Like, oh, he's super compassionate. So I'm just totally going to take, and then he'll give. That's not the mood.
No.
That's not the spirit of it.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. The spirit is I must be responsible for myself and I must genuinely and sincerely want to clean up and really clean up, really become loving. And part of that is we need to forgive. We need to forgive ourselves. And there probably needs to be some integrity restored some places. For some guys, that means, hey, you need to have a serious conversation with your wife that's going to be super uncomfortable.
Right.
You need to, maybe like, say sorry. Something that I did is I sent a letter to an ex-girlfriend 20 years later. Sounds weird. I tracked her down. I sent an old high school friend. I said, do you know, I don't want to mention names, so I'm purposely trying not to say names, right? Hey, are you still in contact with her? She said, yeah, I am. I'm like, oh my goodness, amazing. Do you have like her email or something? She's like, yeah, I got an email. So I sent an email and I didn't think she would even reply. And I said to her, I think the title of the email was like long overdue. And I said, look, I want to really apologize for I was unfaithful, right? And I want to apologize for being unfaithful. And I want to, own that. And I want to own the fact that when you confronted about me, I wasn't man enough to admit it. I just like, no, just an idiot, right? Blah, blah, blah. So I wrote her this letter. And so I sent it to her. And, I just never thought I would even hear from her type of thing. And like 2 days later, because I left her my WhatsApp number. Like I said, if you happen to connect or whatever, you can reply, you can not reply, or you could send me a text if that's easier. Yeah. But if I never hear from you, that's also cool. I just felt like I wanted to actually acknowledge that. Like a couple days later, I get a WhatsApp message from her. She's like, hey, it's so-and-so. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, hey. So I drop her a voice message. Hey. She's like, yeah, I got your email. She's like, I actually took a few days because I kind of didn't know even what to say. She's like, quite honestly, like I don't think about it. Like that was so long ago. Right. And I'm like, and I said to them, I'm like, you probably don't like, I would hope that you have moved on and life is well for you and blah, blah, blah. Right. Anyways. And she forgave me. Right. And and I was just like, I felt like it was such a mercy. I felt like God just like released me from something that I was carrying in my subconscious for 20 years. This guilt, this kind of like, because I knew that was on me. That was all me. Yeah. And it was like, yo. And I felt so light after. Wow. And you know what's interesting? My weed addiction started after me and her broke up. And after tracing it back and doing some more reflection, I recognized that I used marijuana to cover up the pain of that breakup that I never really dealt with. So that's what I mean about restoring integrity and forgiveness. It's like let's do the work that's tough for the heart, but so cleansing.
Yes.
Like, do you know how light I felt after that? Like, I was like free, like, oh, people want freedom. Oh, I just got freedom, man.
Yeah.
I know what freedom is on a whole different level now, because I asked for forgiveness by the grace of God through her. I received that forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
Wow.
And I'm good. Like, I feel like my consciousness is clear. Like, I'm good. Like, if I was to pass tomorrow, I would feel light. Like, I'm good. I got nothing that is in my heart that I know of. You know, I'm not saying there's not stuff there. There's always stuff I'm sure to work on.
Yeah.
But the reason that, like, I just find like life so good these days is because I feel like forgiven, like mercy. And so this is a huge part of it. And so I feel like guys need to forgive themselves, know that they're forgiven, know that God loves you unconditionally. He loves you so much. And just like a loving father wants you to do well, the only reason he's course correcting you or giving you some tough karma is because he's like trying to straighten you out.
Yeah.
So just surrender and just straighten out and watch life go. And I'm not talking about life next life, or I'm talking this life. Watch stuff start working out for you.
Yeah.
Like, watch stuff start straightening out for you because your vibration, your energy is more pure, right? So a part of that is forgiveness. Then the second aspect of that is developing willpower. So mental exercises to literally develop willpower.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So like, how do we develop willpower, right? So as devotees, mantra meditation is an amazing way. But there are other things that we can do to develop willpower. One great thing that we can do, which is largely not encouraged within devotee community, so I apologize, right. But is working out. I find that just working out has been a great outlet for my own energy. And
Really? You think it's not encouraged?
yeah, at least that was the experience that I had. Right?
Oh, interesting.
Like, yeah, like it's not like really, like you don't want to put too much emphasis on the body, right? So you don't want to be working out. But to me, it's the spirit of why you're working out. I understand from the perspective of like, I just want to be ripped so I can like, you know,
Attract women or something like that.
Yeah, that's not why we're working out.
Yeah.
The spirit behind it is, though, for me, I started working out and I found it to be really great because first of all, it's just increased my energy levels. It's increased my overall vitality and the amount that I can be of service. It's really helped clear brain fog and these types of things along with retention and such. Yeah. But I also find it just a great outlet. Like I'll tell you, by 9 o'clock, I'm beat tight. By 9:30, I'm like, okay, man, like I want to go to bed. Yeah. Especially after like leg day. Anybody who works out and does leg day, you know, like, oh my gosh, leg day. It's like the worst. Squats.
Deadlifts.
Yeah. I was like, yo, listen, I don't want it, not because I don't want it. I don't want it because I'm beat tired. So I've done it where I've been like really like, I'm ready to go here. Right. And, and my wife may be sick or, she's right. And I'm like, okay. Now I used to like, that's where like back in the day, I'd be more pressured. Like, oh, come on, oh, right? And I just don't want to be that way anymore. Like, right? So I'm like, oh, you know what? No problem. I'm going to the gym. And I just put in a second workout or I'll go for a walk. Right. Just dissipate that. Right. Right. So, so strengthening willpower, building awareness around the triggers, forgiveness, then sustainability, meaning after the 30 days, how does this become a sustainable lifestyle? Right. And like, how do you now do it beyond the 30 days?
Yeah,
right?
Very interesting.
And then we talk about rewiring, because again, you can't just white knuckle it, because white knuckling it is a form of suppression. It's just like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Oh, I do it. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Oh, I do it. Right. And then every time you do it, you're actually setting up this new pathway in which you're building lower self-esteem, because now you're saying I'm going to do something and then you don't do it. Yeah. And now you feel like now I'm failing. And that's even worse, because now you're setting a a new neural pathway that says, I don't accomplish my goals.
Yes.
And what you want is a pathway that says, I accomplish what I say. I want high levels of integrity is me and my word are one.
Yes.
So if I say I'm going to do something, I do it.
Yes, yes.
That's what it's all about.
I love that.
Yeah, that's to me the biggest thing. So so when you and your word are one, when your heart, your thoughts, your actions and word are all one, you are like whatever you do in the world, it will be successful, and you will embody so many good qualities, right?
Yes.
And it's all comes from integrity, having a strong, high standard of integrity. And that's the main thing that we do with our guys. So I call us a positive program, meaning, so other programs, what makes us different than many other programs is out there is that they focus on the negative part of it. Well, I say the negative, not negative in like a bad way, negative in like what you're not going to do. So I call it a negation goal. So it's like, I'm not going to watch porn.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, self-pleasure. Okay, that's good. It's not bad to have those things. But more importantly, what are you going to do?
Yes.
Right? It's
Working out and
yeah,
all that stuff.
That's right. It's more important actually to focus on what you're going to do, because we know to overtake a lower habit, you overtake it with a higher habit.
Yes.
So, right, maybe you're not at the point where you can sit there and chant 64 rounds as your higher habit. So you're like, okay, I can't do that. Okay, but what can you do? Well, if you can go from watching porn and replacing that with working out, that's a good move.
Yeah.
And then if you can continue to stack this. And the beauty is once you figure out how to do this, you can do this with any area of your life. That's the beauty. It's a foundational training, because what happens is guys start straightening out one area, and everything is interconnected, right? So all of a sudden now they start making, because they have better willpower here, now they have better willpower in their finances. Now they're like, yeah, I'm actually saving more than I've ever saved before. I'm like, yeah, because that OnlyFans chick isn't getting paid from you anymore, right? Or all that time, attention, energy is going into better things, but simply because you can think long term, you can retain. Yeah. Well, now you can retain finances better. Oh, I've got a better savings account. In fact, I'm investing now. Oh, great.
Wow.
Right? My health is improved. I'm eating better. I'm not bringing the second plate out. I'm good with one plate.
Right.
Why? Because you're more sense controlled, right? So you got to rewire your brain.
Yeah.
It's for maybe 1.1% of the population, 1% of the population, the rare guy, he's going to say, I'm done. And he's done. Great. And maybe he's just got so many good impressions that's all he needed. Great. That's fantastic. If you can do that, just stop and move on with life.
I was just going to say that there's levels to this thing, and that even if someone is functioning on a really much higher level where it's like, oh, they only want to tweak this much and then they feel like they're in a comfortable place. There's also someone who is really on the lower level, like, oh, I'm like super addicted and like I just can't control it, blah blah. There's stuff for both of those people and everybody in between as well, right?
Yeah, so we have levels of support and levels of training depending where somebody's at.
Oh, okay.
Right. So basically we have like our original program, which is the sexual alchemy training, right? And that's a 6-month training course. And that's for guys who want to learn to transmute that energy, bring it up into the higher centers. They want to learn the breathwork exercises and the practices of actually drawing that energy up and circulating it,
right,
and how to use that energy to unleash their creative potentials, magnetism, articulation, all of that good stuff.
Wow.
How to do that.
I love that.
Yeah, that's like the higher level stuff. I work with a lot of business owners. I work with like plastic surgeons. I work with like really high level guys. I've trained some politicians. I've trained some congregational leaders, all on transmutation. Then there's and then there's like the guy who's like, I'm at the stage of like pornography and like wanting to like, I'm addicted to porn and I need help there.
It's just like a young guy who's maybe in school or something and hasn't got into the career yet, just like getting into things.
Yeah, that type of thing. Yeah. And sometimes it's not a young guy, sometimes it's an older guy, but that's just his starting point.
Right.
Right. It's just like,
Sure, sure.
it's just where they're starting at from a level of, let's say, S3X mastery. Right. Which we have like a progression ladder. So I'd say like the first rung is like by yourself, alone, with a screen.
Yes.
That's the lowest rung on the ladder.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've even told guys, I would rather have you go wank it, but not to corn.
Right.
So we'll start with that with some guys. Like
Right.
we'll start right there. Be like, okay, look, no, you're just cutting it right now. All we're working on is no corn.
Yes.
You feel the urge?
Do it.
Do it. In fact, I would prefer you do that because if the urge is going to get you to watch corn, I would rather have you do that because there's at least some power of imagination.
Yes.
There's at least some like, something that's not an external force that's controlling you. It's an internal, you can, right? Then we get to like, okay. Then we teach like non-ejaculatory self-pleasure, right? Which is like the progression that I used, which was like, okay, I can give that up, but man, I still got the urge to like self-pleasure. All right. So here is how to self-pleasure, but without the ejaculation. So this way you start to actually retrain your brain of that, S3X energy doesn't necessarily mean I have to have an ejaculation. I can retrain that. And then during those practices, you start to learn to draw energy up in an aroused state. And then you go to no self-pleasure, no corn, no self-pleasure, only through lovemaking, only in intimacy.
Right.
Right? And only in intimacy in a committed relationship.
Yeah.
Then
I
that's
love that
next
there's
level.
gradations to that because I'm sure you get flack from at least devotees for like the like you're teaching that without ejaculation.
Yeah. Non-ejaculatory S3X, non-ejaculatory orgasms is generally where the flat comes in.
Yeah.
And I understand the perspective of why they would be like, well, why would you teach that?
Yeah.
But again, take into context, if a guy is watching corn and he is addicted to this is a step up, not a step down.
Yeah.
Now, if you're already above that, great. You don't need that.
Yeah.
So we don't teach you that, right? Right. It's like you still have to be responsible for your own journey,
Yes.
right? Like, so I understand from it. And generally the flack just comes from people, what I've noticed is just people who see headlines and little clips.
Yeah.
And then they have a knee-jerk reaction, right? And then they make up their mind about something without really fully understanding, right? And that's fine. Look, I'm not here for everybody. I'm here for those who need my help. I'm here and available. And if you don't need my help or think what I do is dumb or crazy, then all power to you.
Yeah.
And we can still cooperate in other services and ways, right? Because unity and diversity, and there's, something for everybody in the way.
I do want to underscore that all men or most men will have to deal with this sometime in their life, and that there is a resource in Nakula Das for wherever you are in your journey in trying to either control this, transmute it, develop more integrity in your life, or whatever, even creating a business, or like there's all this, like this is all connected.
Yes. Yeah.
Like people need to understand this is all connected.
Yes.
Krishna, the semen retention, the corn, everything is connected, and specifically for men because you only deal with men.
Yeah, we're a men's ministry. Yeah. And that's because I'm like, hey, so first of all, we have to admit, that there's a difference between a man and a woman.
Right.
Right.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we'll save that for another time. But we have to first admit that and be real about that and recognize that while women can transmute their energy and everything as well, because I do get women devotees have reached out to me and said, do you do anything for women? And
Right.
I said, I don't right now. If a woman was interested in doing this work, I would be happy to teach her the process in which then she could recreate the training for women
Oh, interesting.
And so, you know, that's a potential,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's right that I, as a man, teach women
Yeah.
about their S3X energy,
Yeah.
because I have no personal, I can't tell you personally the experience of it. And because I teach so much from my personal experience,
Sure.
I'm like, I just don't think I would be effective. I can mechanically tell you what to do and what not to do, but I think what makes a great teacher is not that they just know the mechanics, but that they live it and they can talk about it from very practical, experiential things, right? And so I believe that, yeah. So that's, I only work with men, and I also noticed that, like, you know, men just like women need time with other women to chat about. The way that men interact is different than the way women interact. Our psychologies are different. The way we talk to and relate to each other are different, right? So men also just need time to be with other guys and just have like that bro time and just to talk about men's stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I think it's important to keep it just as a men's ministry. But yeah, if a woman out there was interested in actually facilitating this type of work, we are open to the idea of a woman learning the practices and then recreating it. But she'd have to be super dedicated. Like it would have to be something she was really, really like wanting to do as a serious endeavor.
I'm sure that some devotees have a concern about confidentiality and privacy and things. Is there something that you can speak to that point?
Yeah, there's some people that have worked with me and you'll never know. And, you know, because they've said, Nakula, I don't want anybody knowing I'm doing this. And I said, great. They don't have to participate in the groups or anything like that. So we have a group, you know, where all my students are, but I have guys not in that group that work with me and they only talk to me and that's it. Okay. So yeah, it's no one will ever know if you don't want them to know. And, you know, rightfully so. Like some guys have come and through our program, which are leaders, and they're like, I need some help around this, but it will ruin my reputation. I will be judged for it. I will be, and I just don't want to deal with that. I really like to just deal with this, and if I can, without having to go through some public shaming or something like this, right?
Yeah,
I'm like, totally get it.
Yeah.
Other guys are dealing with. I mean, if their habit continues, like, you know, they run massive businesses and they have a lot on the riding. Like, and I just think, like, we all know the big names like Tiger Woods or Bill Clinton or, you know, right, like these guys who have you know, somewhat tarnished or ruined their reputation because, you know, of a bad choice one night. Yeah. Right. You know, and it's like, man, I always said, like, man, if I had Bill Clinton, you know, he might have a different rep, you know, right? Yeah. Because, right, if I could have just talked to Tiger Woods a little bit before and just shown him a little bit of breath work, you know, it could have been a whole different story. You know, he could have had some more trophies on his wall instead of like lawsuits or whatever, or, you know, how much ever he's got to pay out or whatever, right? So anyways, you know, just, so I totally understand that, you know, confidentiality is important. Now, I also challenge guys to be open about it. Yeah. Right. I will never force. It's always our students. It's always up to you what you do and don't do. Yes. We give you the tools and I will tell you everything that I believe will be in your best interest. But at the end of the day, it's always up to you to take the information and then do what you will with it. Right. And take the knowledge and do what you will. But I do encourage guys to be open because I said, like, you will inspire a lot of guys if you were just open with it. Like the fact, like I love the fact that you're doing this. Yeah. And I told you this about your podcast. Like I love like that you have like, you know, like you had from the Bhakti Marg line, right? Yes. I love that you had that guy on, right? He was like, oh, that's awesome. Why not? Right? Why are we not talking to folks, especially within the Vaishnava community, right? Yeah. Like, you know, it's like, why are we not having those conversations? Why are we not? Totally. I've always said, you know what would be an awesome conversation if like some of the leaders, I'll just say, you know, I won't say names, but if some of the big leaders who are known to not get along would actually come together in a forum like this.
Yes.
Why don't we get some of them on the Namarasa show and have a conversation, and you can facilitate. You're the perfect guy to facilitate it, right? You're like, I actually said to a guy, I said, yeah, I'm doing this. But he's like, oh, what's this podcast all about? I'm just like, well, it's like, I mean, he's a devotee, the Hare Krishna devotee. And, you know, it's mainly a devotee, but anybody can listen to it, you know, podcast. And he's like, oh, I'll check it out and such. I said, so he's the Joe Rogan of the Hare Krishna community, right? Right? I said, and one thing I like about Joe Rogan is that he talks to everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's not about this or that. He's like, he'll talk to
It's
everybody.
about human to human, and we're just having a conversation. That's what Joe Rogan said. He's like the Ishtadev of the podcasters, you know, like, so my respect to Shriman Joe Rogan. But one of the things that really, you know, stands out about him is he always says, like, even with this Kamala Harris and Trump thing, like he wanted Kamala to come on, and he was saying, I'm not going to give her a hard question. I just want to talk human to human. We'll just have a conversation. But, you know, I guess they weren't ready to do that. But from his side, he just wanted to do that, which I really appreciate that. And I tried to imbibe that same quality that he has, that I just want to talk to another human.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's so good. And I love these long form discussions because you can actually talk about things, and we can go on tangents, and you can get to know somebody at a deeper level, right? You can actually get to know somebody, as opposed to like, I saw a clip on Facebook where he was talking about non-ejaculatory sex. Oh my gosh, right? And it's like, dude, if you think you can get to know someone off of 30-second or a minute shorts or reels, like, you can't. Yes, I put tons of shorts and reels and stuff out because we have to get our message out there, right? But, like, you know, imagine if people just chalked up the Hare Krishna community to one thing. Like, and people do.
It happens.
And it happens, right? People do. They're like, I went to a temple, someone was rude to me. Oh my goodness. Well, sorry. Like, you know, I don't know if you remember, I think I tell the story of, like, so I was going to Bhakti Sastri, and this was when I was like just brand new and just like didn't know anything. And I still, you know, I still say I'm brand new. 10 years later, I'm still brand new, right? And I'm like, and this lady was like, she was definitely being rude to me, but like her insult was like, oh, you're so into sense pleasure or something. That's how she was trying to insult me. And I only, right? And because I didn't really understand what she was saying, I just said, thank you. I knew she was being rude, but I didn't quite get it because I didn't know devotee lingo. I didn't know sense pleasure is a bad. She's like, you're so into sense pleasure. And I was like, thank you.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh, that's what she was trying to say. I'm like, well, yeah. Like,
who isn't?
Who isn't? I was like, well, like, I didn't know. I didn't even know. Again, I just told you what a good night was. It was going to the casino and going to the strip club. And now I'm like, at least I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, it's like we fault people for like they come into the temple, then we fault them for not being like pure.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've been in the temple 3 times. Why aren't you a saint already? It's like, I don't even know what this guy's name is, right? Like, how do I say it? Right? You know, it's like,
oh my God.
Right? So it's like, you know, I love what you do, man.
Bro, I love what you do. You are so cool. I feel like I was telling Tulsi yesterday, I was like, I'm really drawn to Nakula Das. There's something about you that's like really drawing me to you, and I'm so glad we did this podcast. I mean, we've gone 2 hours and 17 minutes. Is
that where we're at? Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so this is a long one, but this has to be one of my top 5 favorite, I think.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Is there anything you wanna? So, for our audience listening, if you've listened this far, we're gonna if you're still with us, we're gonna put all of Nakula Das's links in the description so you can get in contact with him if you're interested in the work he does. Is there anything you wanna part with for our audience?
Yeah. I didn't answer the question about Dr. Flatto's work.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
what I'll do quickly is just say this: the seminal fluid, the spinal fluid,
yes,
and the brain tissues are generally made out of the same chemical compounds. So the idea of the semen flowing upwards is backed up by Dr. Flatto's work in modern science, which says that actually there's a fight between, I call it the fight between your balls and your brain, right?
Right.
And that fight isn't just a psychological fight. It isn't just like, oh, watch it, don't watch it, like kind of the angel and devil kind of like do it, don't do it, right?
Yeah.
That we all face. It's actually a resource battle. So the more someone's depleting themselves, your resources have to stay in your lower centers and base. One thing that guys experience when they are self-pleasuring a lot and such is lower back pain. So they'll often complain like, my back, my lower back, right?
Yeah.
And that could be, this is not the only reason. So just in case any women who are watching is like, they're like, oh, yeah. Next to your husband's like, oh, my back hurts. Oh, I knew it. Like, don't come to me. Don't like Nakula said. I'll say, there could be many reasons someone has lower back pain, but one thing is like lower back pain. And what we've noticed in guys that start to clean up in that regards and they start to get away from that is that they start reporting like, oh, you know what? Actually, my back feels a lot better. I'm more mobile. I have better like spinal function and such. I just feel better all around.
Yeah.
And so as that travels upwards, it takes on, it kind of shifts a little bit and it replenishes the spinal fluid, which allows your energy then to flow upwards easier, allowing you to tap into the higher energy centers. And then when it reaches the brain, it actually starts to redistribute and nourish your brain, which actually makes your ability to just have sharper memory, deeper focus, your synapses, your firing off of neurons goes quicker. So you can retain information. You're more witty. You're a little bit more charismatic because you can just like, you're sharp. You're really sharp, right? Yeah. And you actually need to be sharp for higher spiritual growth and understanding.
Yes.
Right. And I know Prabhupada has done lecture or something around this.
Oh, totally. Yeah. This is all along the same lines as what we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Right. Yeah. So So nothing I'm saying is it's not off sastra.
Not at all.
Okay. No. Yeah. Right. So it's like you're sharper, and you actually need that sharpness for higher spiritual knowledge. Yeah. So here's a tough pill to swallow for any devotee, is that this is why you have to deal with this as an issue. Yeah. Because if you don't, you're in a way, you're kind of, how do I say this in a way that I want it to be felt in the right spirit? You're not giving yourself the best opportunity to really connect or understand what it is you're reading at a deeper level. Yeah. And you're kind of kidding yourself if you think I can be doing this, but because I'm reading and chanting, that it's not affecting your ability to read and chant. Totally. Because you'll know your potency gives you better quality meditations and practices. Totally, yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to, because I did want to make sure that I looped and ended that loop.
Love that. That's a really great conclusion, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, and I guess I don't really have anything else to say. Reach out to me, connect with me if it resonates. I'm here to help. Yeah. And if I can help you, I got a ton of cool people in my network that I can direct you to. And once again, man, I love what you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Nakula Das, I absolutely admire you. This is super awesome. Again, I'll put the stuff in the description, how you can get in contact with him. Please like, subscribe, and comment. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friend, but you'll probably get judged for it. But this was an awesome conversation, super open. I love that so much. We need to have more conversations around these things. As I always say, not less conversations, because it's just more conversations is just more healthy, I think. But have a good night, everyone. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thanks again. Haribol.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.